I ask you, who can think of this as other than a grotesque parody of even the most elementary principles of decency, ones which we don't have to be taught? Who doesn't know that the rape and torture and desecration of children is wicked, is an iniquity? And how I'm never going to be told again by the Roman Catholic Church that I wouldn't know good from evil if it wasn't for them. I'm sorry. I'm never going to hear that again. They can't hedge this. If it be not true, as St. Paul says, that Christ crucified, rose again, we are the unhappiest people living. That I can take seriously. That I can understand. And I take leave to doubt it. And I don't believe there's any salvation. I don't believe there is any redemption. So that's my answer.
Mr. Hitchens, I wouldn't call myself a fan of yours, but I am a devout YouTube follower, so it's a pleasure to actually hear you in person.
Thank you.
I want to challenge an assertion in your book, and you argue that one of the reasons why religion poisons everything is because it's abusive to children. Now, multiple studies have shown that in the U.S., religiously active youth are less likely to be depressed and commit suicide, and they're less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. So my question would be, how could child abuse have an empirically verifiable effect on youth that is so positive?
Was the question, I'll just say, audible to everybody? Right. So I feared that you would do this. You give me the task of making your question not just audible but intelligible. The gentleman asks, or claims to know, that the more religious you are as a young person in the United States, the less likely you are to be depressed or alienated, and connects this, by what means I don't know, to the question of child abuse, which is a euphemism for torture, rape, and psychic destruction of children. Two things. First, it is said that Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam group gets black kids off drugs. I have no means of knowing whether this is or is not true. But let's grant that it might be true. It doesn't seem to have been established, but it doesn't alter the fact that the Nation of Islam is a racist crackpot organization, which anyone interested in mental health would be well advised to stay away from. It is said that the Mormon Church has a lower incidence of misery in family life and higher motivations. That might, for all I know, be true. But it doesn't alter the fact that Joseph Smith's fake religion is an outrageous imposture on human reason and dignity. It's a cult. It's a regrettable fact that some people do better in cults because they're so weak-minded and cowardly that they need the support of a pseudo-family. This says absolutely nothing at all about the value of religion, let alone its validity morally or philosophically. I hope that's clear. Since you've brought up the question of the rape and torture and psychic destruction of the lives of children, I suppose I will just do this.
I thought this might come up.
It's awkward because I know my vis-a-vis, Dr. Haldane, is a practicing Roman Catholic, but it does seem to me that after what we've learned about what the Roman Church has done to the children entrusted to its care, that I don't know of a single case, I've studied quite a lot of them, Australia, the United States, Ireland, France, Austria, Germany, Italy, and this is by no means an exhausted list, that there is no case where those children wouldn't have been better off if the secular courts had the ordering of it, instead of private, secret religious courts that were interested not in what you call, rightly, the inviolability of the innocent, a precept, not a truth, but a precept that you invoked, but were instead concerned only with the silencing of the victims, the exculpation of the criminals, the covering up of the crime, and the continuing exculpation, cover-up, and blackmail of the victims, now practiced by the very head of this church himself, a man who his followers believe to be the vicar of Christ on earth.
And one of the issues I noticed, though,
is that you are able to, at times it appears the intent and the content of some of your criticisms are very heartfelt in disappointment with the concept of benevolence, of a sense of life as a gift, and the sense of present as being a present. And what I ask you is, some of that criticism seems to be beyond the capacity of a primate. And so I ask you, as a not religious person, but as a Christian, that
it's come to that.
Yes. One who disdains the ignorance of man-made religion because of the thousands of years of outcomes of it. I ask you, where in the world is that source coming from that is actually able to articulate the concept of one who is disappointed and standing in the position of an anti-theist? Because I would say perhaps that source might be inspired.
Yeah. It got less good as it went along, I think. I started very promisingly. Well, but by the way, I knew this would happen, and you must see it a lot. You know, I'm not religious at all. I'm just a Christian. I think, is it not George? Is it not? It's like being an Anglican. Is it not George Herbert, the great poet of Anglicanism, who speaks of the sweet mediocrity of our native church? It commits you to nothing. Actually, my impression of Christianity is that you are a Christian if you believe that God gave a Son for the redemption of our sins and allowed him to become a human sacrifice as the seal of that pact. If you don't believe something like that, that a human sacrifice commits you even if you didn't want it to happen, I don't really think you can say you're a Christian. You ask me what I think the source is, and where you almost seem to ask, where does my divine spark come from? Well, sweetie, I don't know, but I don't mind not knowing. I look forward to discovering further frontiers of my ignorance. Socrates was never wiser than when he said the definition of the educated is the one who has some idea of how little he knows. And the more education you get, and the older, I warn you, you get, the more you'll find out that you know more and more about less and less and less, and more things. And it's wonderful. It's a tremendous experiment in learning. So I'm quite happy to say I don't know, but the believer has to say that they do know. We know from the New Testament that the Virgin Mary did have a number of... You didn't have to invent such an extreme contingency for your question, because one of the things that makes theology, I think, incoherent and absurd is that not content with creating a supreme being full of love and care, there's another supreme being has to be created who was once himself an angel in heaven, who is the source of all woe and evil and temptation. And God can't seem to defeat him, nor can he seem to save his creatures from having created the Manichaean opposite. So don't worry, your question was anticipated. Oh yes, the one who mandates torture and slavery and wickedness is already amongst us by divine mandate. How do you like that? What could possibly be more ridiculous?